How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another exciting video. In the last video, we did an overview of the application we're going to be building, and now we're going to actually get started with writing some Dart code so that we can actually start working on that application. So right now I have VS Code open. I have this newsfeed folder open that has my Flutter project right here, and then also that simple server that we set up in the last video. So basically in this video, we're going to be going through this diagram and implementing these different features. So that's going to be pretty interesting. So we're going to work on this main first, and then we're going to slowly see how to make this app stateful component, and then we're going to see how to do this material app and scaffold and get all these different components to show up on our device. So I'm also running my Android emulator. So I just kind of navigated into that Flutter project and ran Flutter run. So now this is that default app that you kind of get. So we're going to go ahead, open up this newsfeed folder, lib, and then main.dart, and then that's where we're going to be working. But before I go into that, just one quick thing I want to kind of show that's handy if you're using VS Code. You can go into these extensions. Then there's this Flutter extension that you can install, and this one's very, very handy for writing the Dart and Flutter code, because basically it's going to have all this syntax highlighting and all these different suggestions that you can kind of have as you're typing along, and then it makes it very, very handy for writing this kind of code. So I highly suggest that you go ahead, search for Flutter, and then just download this extension. Alright, with that aside, let's go ahead and get started with writing some Dart code. So I'm going to open up this main.dart. I'm just going to do a Command A and just delete everything so we're starting on a clean slate. So first thing we're going to need is to basically import the material component. So if we go into the Flutter documentation, and then we kind of go into this widget catalog, basically we want to use the material components. And then this is something we want to basically import into every single file that I'm going to be making. And then this right here kind of gives us a lot of out-of-the-box behavior so that we can basically do a lot of things that we'd normally want to do with mobile applications. So kind of helps with the app structure and buttons, inputs, and all this sort of stuff. And then you can kind of go through and see a couple different things that you can do with this. But we in particular are going to be making use of this scaffold, because it basically implements the basic material design, visual layout structure, and it just lets us do a bunch of different handy things. So things like making the app bar, this floating action button, then kind of our body section, and gives us a lot of default sort of styling, and just has kind of a lot of code out of the box that really, really helps us out. So basically we can go down into the constructor, and then here we can kind of see all the different things that we can do. So here's like that app bar, we have our body, our floating action button, and then also the bottom navigation bar. These are all different things we're going to be making use of in this scaffold to make the application we want. So let's go ahead and kind of go through this diagram. So we have this main. So first thing we need is this run app, which is going to run our app. So let's go ahead and work on that first. So I'm going to zoom in a bit just so that you guys can see what I'm writing, maybe a little more. So let's go ahead and import that material component. So what you're going to do is you're going to import, and then we're going to import a third-party package. So the way you do that is by writing package, and then the package. So it'll be flutter/material.dart. That's what we want. And then every Dart application needs a main function. So this is where we're going to be doing that in our main.dart. And then we're going to do that run app, and we're going to run our app. So this app right here is a class that I still need to create, and then we're going to invoke that class. So I'm going to go into this lib, create a new folder, which is going to be my src folder. And then in here, I'm going to make an app.dart where I'm going to make that app class. So I'm going to do class app. And then in the main.dart, we also have to make sure we import that. So the path to that is going to be src/app.dart. That way we can access that. I'm just going to save these two files. And then we're still getting an error because we need to make this a widget. So I'm going to go ahead, again, import that package that we need. So flutter material.dart. And then basically we're going to turn this into a stateful widget. So what we're trying to accomplish is having this app and then having this app state. And then basically whenever our app re-renders, this app state is going to basically hold those values that we want to have as state so that our app can go ahead and kind of access that state. So that's kind of what we need to accomplish here. So the steps in order to accomplish this is, first you need to make this app be a stateful widget. So I'm going to extend stateful widget. So that's the first step. Now we need to make this app state class. So that's what's going to actually hold our state. So I'm going to do class app state. This is going to extend state with the generic type of app. So those are the first two things. Now in here, I have to basically run, or I have to create a function that's going to essentially create this state. So that's going to be called create state. And then it's going to return app state. All right, and then we still have another step here to do. And basically here it says missing concrete implementation of state.build. So we have to make this build function. And then we also have to basically have this return a widget. So you can see the return type of widget. So I'm gonna also just add that in. It's always good to kind of add in the types that things return in Dart, just to kind of help out Dart figure out what it's returning. And then for now we can return something like a text widget. That just says, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It'll just be a text widget for now. And then here we're gonna also pass in a context. So that's a parameter that you have to pass to this build. And then basically these different classes kind of have their own context where sort of child classes can kind of reach up and access the context of a parent class. And this is kind of something to use to help out with that, and it's not really something we're making use of in this application, but in certain design patterns like the block pattern, it's something you kind of make use of, but in our application we won't need to. And now we can't just return this, why does this keep coming up? So basically we can't just keep returning this text widget. Instead what we want to do is we want to return our material component, and then from there we want to return the scaffold, and then we want to basically make those different components. So just to kind of show that, you want to have the material app, we want to have a scaffold, and then in that scaffold we have those different properties that we can kind of pass. So the app bar, then we're going to have a container that wraps our posts, then we're going to have the bottom app bar, and then we're also going to have a floating action button. So these are all things that we need. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So instead of a text widget, I'm going to return a material app. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what this material app is. So it's a convenience widget that wraps a number of widgets that are commonly required for material design applications. And then basically, if we go down to the constructor, there's different things that you can pass to this. And the one we're going to be making use of is this home named parameter, which is going to be a widget. So let's go ahead and do that. So home, and then this widget is going to be our scaffold. And then also make sure to have a comma, because if you don't, it's going to format it like this. And then if you do have a comma, it's going to format it like this. So this is kind of like a VS Code thing if you're using that Flutter extension. So you want to make sure you have these commas so that when you save, it kind of formats it nicely. I mean, if you like it formatted the other way, then I mean, feel free to leave out this comma. I just like things to be kind of structured this way. And then anyway, with that aside, let's go back to our scaffold now. And let's start off by maybe passing in this app bar. So this is a name parameter of app bar. And then let's see what we have to pass to this. So this is a type of preferred size widget. So let's go ahead and see what that is. So basically we have different implementers for this, one of which is the app bar. So this is something we're definitely going to want to make use of. So let's go ahead, click this app bar, and see what we have to do to utilize this. So here's the constructor. So I can start off by just kind of utilizing that constructor. So app bar. And now let's see what we have to pass to this. So we have a title. So this is going to be of type widget. All right, so that means that I have to pass this name parameter of title, and it can't just be text like this. It has to actually be a widget. So I'm going to make use of the text widget. And then I'll type in newsfeed. And then I'll put that comma at the end here just so that when I save, it keeps this formatting. So far we'll just have our app bar. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. So this is our default application. So I'm going to click my terminal and do a Shift R, and that's going to do a hot restart. And then we'll see our updated application with now this app bar that says newsfeed. So perfect. And now we have this blank screen. So basically for that blank screen, what we want to pass, let's go ahead and take a look. And there should be a body property. I'm not seeing it here, so let me... Or sorry, this is the app bar. I should be going back to the scaffold. All right, there it is. So there's this body widget. So this is something we want to pass, and that's basically going to be the body of this application. So right underneath this app bar, I'm going to pass the body named parameter. And then for now, I'll just do a text widget that says posts, because this is where our posts are going to be. So I'll just leave it like this. Then the next thing I want to handle is maybe the floating action button. So if we take a look, we have the, where is it? Right here, the floating action button, which is going to be of type widget. So I'm going to go ahead and make use of that. So floating action button. And now let's go ahead and see what we need to use. So here it says it returns a widget, but in particular, we want to have a floating action button. So let's go ahead and search for floating action button. So it's not super clear that this is what you'd want, but basically this right here is what we want to make use of, this floating action button class. And then if we kind of take a look at the constructor, we have some different things that we can pass to this. And then in particular, we're going to want, let's see, so a child. So this is going to be a widget. And then in here, we're going to basically pass an icon. So we kind of want that refresh icon. So this is all stuff we're going to see. And then another thing you'll notice, if I can find it in here, yeah, there we go. So some of these parameters are required. And then one in particular is this onPressed. So whenever you see this required, this means you have to utilize this parameter. Everything else is optional, but this right here we need. So I'm going to go ahead, have that floating action button class. I'm going to put that comma at the end. And then here I'm going to have that onPressed. And then that onPressed is a named parameter. And for now, I'm just going to have it be an anonymous function like this. And I just won't pass anything. And then later on, this will be a function that we're going to define. And then it's going to basically make that HTTP request and retrieve our posts. And then those posts are also going to be in this app state. So I'm also going to have kind of like a sort of list of posts, which I'm going to have like some default initialized posts like this, and then eventually we're going to update it. I'm going to do that later once we kind of get to the posts. I probably won't have time for that in this video just because we're kind of handling a lot of this structure. So let me go ahead and save and see what we've got so far. So we should also see that floating action button, so there it is. But I also want to make sure I have that icon. And then maybe another useful thing is having also a tooltip. That's another thing that you can pass. So right here, so that you pass as a string. So in this floating action button. So I'm going to make this on separate lines, and I'm going to have my tooltip. And it'll just say something like refresh posts. And then let me also put a comma after here. So that way this is formatted properly. And then let me refresh. And then we should see that tooltip. There it is, refresh posts. All right, so there's that. And then finally, I want to have that icon. So that icon, you're basically going to pass in this child property, and it's going to be of type widget. So let's go ahead and see how we can create that icon. So I can search for icon. So this is a class that you can use. And then basically inside of this class, you can pass an icon. So it's not super clear, but basically what you want to make use of is this icons class. And then from here, you're going to get a bunch of different icons that you can use. Let's go ahead and kind of start this off. So you're going to have icon. And then in here, you're going to pass in the icon you want to utilize. So basically, you're going to have a whole bunch of different ones here. So you can kind of scroll down and take a look at a bunch of them. The one that we want is called refresh. So I'm going to search for it just so it's a little easier to find it. There it is. So this is the one that we want to make use of. There's refreshed outlined. And then the one I want is this one right here. So the way that you can do that is by doing icons.refresh. So basically you do icons dot the icon that you want. So if you wanted to use something different like this remove circle, you can just do icons dot remove underscore circle. So yeah, these are all the different icons that you can make use of. So now let's go ahead and refresh this. Make sure we have that little refresh symbol. There it is. So we have that refresh icon now. So that's perfect. Now kind of the next thing I want to do is also place this in the center. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So I'm going to go back to my Scaffold class. So here we are. So we have the floating action button that we made use of, but we also have this floating action button location. And that's something that we want to make use of. So let's go ahead and add that in. So this is going to be a separate named parameter. So floating action button location. And then in here, let's go ahead and see what we have to do. So we have this floating action button location class, and let's see what we can do with this. So we have some different properties that we can use. We have these constants, and basically the one we want to make use of is this centered docked. So centered floating action button floating over the scaffold dot bottom navigation bar. So that the center of the floating action button lines up with the top of the navigation bar. So this is something you kind of use in combination with that bottom app bar. So I'm going to do floating action button location. Whoop. And then within here we want to, or actually sorry, this isn't going to be a constructor. We're just going to be utilizing the property. So you're not going to use the parentheses, but instead you're going to do dot center docked. So let's see what that looks like. All right, there it is. So it's now in the middle. And now the next thing we want to do is add that bottom app bar, and then this should be kind of floating above that. So let's see how we can do that bottom app bar. So I'm going to go back to my scaffold. And then we have this bottom navigation bar. So this is what the named parameter we want to make use of, and it's going to be of type widget. So I'm going to add that in. I'll maybe do that, say, right here. So bottom navigation bar. And now let's see what we should pass to this. So it's of type widget, so it's not super clear from this what we should pass in here, but basically what you want to use here is the bottom app bar. So this is the class we want to make use of. And then here's our constructor. And then we have different things that we can pass to this. And in particular, we want to make use of this shape property. And then we also have a child property that's handy. So let's start off with that shape. So I'm going to go ahead, pass bottom app bar. So we have the child. And then instead of the child, I want to do that shape. And so if we take a look at that shape, we have this notched shape class. And then we have different implementers for this. The one I want to make use of is this circular notched rectangle. So this is the class we're going to make use of. And that basically is what creates that shape that we want. So basically, what you want to pass to this is const circular notched rectangle. And then we're going to invoke that, and that'll create that shape for us. So let's see what this looks like so far. So we don't see this showing up yet. So let's see if we need something else. So basically the other thing I want to pass is also this child. So let's go ahead and pass that child to this. And then for the child, I'm going to have a container. And then this is going to have a height of 50.0. So now let's go ahead and see if it shows up. And there it is, our bottom app bar. So basically we needed to pass that height so that it kind of knows how big this needs to be. Otherwise it was just kind of flattened. So there we go. So with these two properties, now we can see that bottom navigation bar. We also have this button centered. We have our top app bar, and then we also have our posts. So basically, I'm going to end things off in this video, so we kind of saw how we can structure some of these things. And then in the next video, we're going to start to kind of tackle this posts here, so that we actually kind of have like a container with a margin around here where we have our different posts, which are going to be cards. We're going to be seeing how to make things like an HTTP request to our backend server so that we can retrieve those posts whenever we click this button, because right now this button doesn't do anything. So yeah, that'll be everything for this video, guys. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this content, hit that notification bell if you want to receive notifications whenever a new video comes out. And also make sure to click those links in the description so that you can go ahead and like the Facebook page and join the Facebook group. That way, if you have any kinds of questions related to web development or app development, or maybe questions that you have on some kind of tutorial that I've created, then you can go ahead and leave me a message and I can get back to you as soon as possible. And also make sure to make those questions reasonable, because if they take me hours to answer, then I probably won't end up answering them. But yeah, anyway, that'll be everything, and I'll see you guys in the next video.